ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin, this is my co-host Teddy, and today I'm answering a question that a lot of you guys have been asking me, and that is, how powerful will the RX Vega Gaming GPU be? Or really be in this case, because there's a lot of different opinions out there right now. And let's first start out with talking about the GPU itself. So we're only going to be talking about the top model RX Vega here today. And it's going to be coming out soon, I'll say that. I don't want to get myself in trouble. I heard certain things from the industry, and the non-reference models will be coming out soon after. And that's all I'll be saying for right now. So let's talk about the GPU itself. So it's looking like it's going to have very similar specs to the Frontier Edition that we've already seen. So that means it's going to have 4,096 stream processors and 64 compute units, 256 TMUs and 64 ROPs, and memory-wise it's going to have half the amount of the Frontier Edition, which has 16 gigabytes HBM2, where the RX Vega is looking like it's going to have 8 gigabytes of HBM2 at 945 megahertz, which is going to be pretty good there as far as memory goes. It's still going to retain the huge 2048-bit bus that you get with the Frontier Edition, which is just going to give you absolutely tons of memory bandwidth. TDP wise, I would imagine it will be 300 watts, somewhere around there. That's most likely where it will sit. And price wise right now, it's rumored to be $599 US for the reference model, which would make it sit between the GTX 1080 and the GTX 1080 Ti. Well, normally anyways. I know the prices are a bit all over the place right now. There's also going to be two other models, what we saw before, like with the Fury X. You know, there was the Fury X was like the top one, you had the Fury Non-X, and then you had the Fury Nano, and I would say it's going to be a similar affair this time around. You have the RX Vega, the top one, and then you'll have a sort of mid-tier one, which will probably be slightly cut down, and that will mainly probably go up against the 1070, and then you have like a mini ITX small form factor version for all the guys doing small form factor builds there. So let's talk about the performance then, and the thing everyone seems to be talking about right now is the 3D Mark 11 benchmarks that they've seen. So I ran this test for myself. It's very old, 3D Mark 11. It's kind of amazing they're still using it, but you know, whatever. So I ran it with my G1 Gaming GTX 1080. And as you can see on the screen, I got a score of 31,317. You compare that to the latest RX Vega results, which are 31,837, and you see it's just slightly higher than my non-reference GTX 1080. Keep in mind this 1080 is running at 2,000 megahertz because of GPU Boost 3.0. So that's pretty interesting in terms of results there. Now I'm seeing a lot of similarities to the RX Vega that I saw with the Fury X, with the RX 480 and the 290X. The first one of which is that it is massively overhyped. We saw that with the Fury X big time. Everyone was like, wow, this is going to be the most powerful GPU ever. Came out and everyone was just like, you know, it's powerful, but not really what we liked. The RX 480 was a big one. You guys will remember back to that. So when that was coming out, everyone was like, yeah, it's going to beat like a GTX 1070 and stuff. And we got it, and it was a good card still, but boy, yeah, it wasn't anywhere close to a 1070. And the 290X, to be fair, when it came out, it did beat a GTX 780, but it wasn't by the huge margins that everybody was saying it was going to be. So that's the first similarity I see there, because a lot of people were saying Vega's just going to blow a 1080 Ti out of the water. Let's bring those expectations down, guys, because I really, really don't think that is going to happen. The second similarity I see is that I'm guessing these results that they got is with a reference model similar to the reference model cooler you get with the Frontier Edition Vega GPU. Now that Frontier Edition, the clock speed on the box, it'll say, is 1600 megahertz, where the RX Vega is going to be slightly higher at 1630 megahertz. Now, why that's interesting is that in actuality, from all the testing I've seen, most people say it sits around 1430 megahertz because of throttling. And that is something we've seen before. With the RX 480, it had power issues because it only had that single 6-pin power adapter, and it also had a little bit of thermal issues there with throttle a little bit, and we saw it big time. If you remember back to the reference 290Xs, oh boy, they ran so hot, it was just unbelievable. They were throttling like crazy. They all ran up to like 95 degrees Celsius, and it was a big problem back then, and it really diminished the performance of both of those GPUs. And that's what I'm seeing, what I believe I'm seeing with these RX Vega GPUs. I would imagine there's some sort of throttling, and that's what I'm basically going to make my prediction of. I think right now the performance of the reference RX Vega GPUs will be like neck and neck with a non-reference, non-overclocked GTX 1080. However, after that, just like what we saw with the RX 480 and the 290s and 290Xs, once the non-reference models come out, they have their big nice coolers on them, upgraded components, all the bells and whistles, we will see that the performance increase will be quite dramatic because it's not throttling. They'll probably come with high clock speeds as well, like 1700 megahertz on the core, and that will help a lot, like what we saw with the 480s and with the RX 290Xs big time. We saw big performance increases there once the non-reference models come out. And so that's what I would imagine. Once those non-reference ones come out, we'll probably see, and the drivers have had a bit more time to sort of mature, I would say that we will see probably about a 10% performance gap over the GTX 1080. But keep in mind, that's still going to be about 20 to 25% slower than a GTX 1080 Ti. But that's what I've been saying for months. I always thought there's such a huge gap, performance gap, between the 1080 and the 1080 Ti. There's like a 35% performance difference between the two. And I always thought that the top Vega card would sit right in the middle of them. Now it's looking like it's sitting more closer to the GTX 1080 on the scale, but still in between those two graphics cards. And if we can go off the pricing, that seems like where it's targeted at as well. Another thing that we need to keep in mind though, the GTX 1080 is a year-old card, over a year old now. And Volta is right around the corner. So even if it sits in between these two GPUs, it's not ideal, because I would imagine the new, whatever it's going to be called, 2080 GTX card, once that comes out to replace the GTX 1080, that will probably be closer to the 1080 Ti in terms of performance. So that will mean that the RX Vega might come out, it'll be 10% better performance than the GTX 1080, but then the 2080 will come out or whatever, and it'll be like 20% slower than that. AMD have just waited way too long with Vega. It's just taken much too long, and I think it's going to hinder them a little bit. But for right now, that is my prediction. That's where I kind of see it sitting, but that's just my opinion. I want to know what you guys think. Do you agree with me? What do you think of the performance of RX Vega? Where do you think it's going to sit? As I said, I think it's going to be about 10% better than the GTX 1080 once the non-reference models come out. But what do you think? Maybe you know things that I don't. What are the rumors you've heard? I want this to be a discussion. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think. And as always, if you haven't already, subscribe to Tech Showdown, because it really shows that you're supporting me and supporting Teddy and supporting the channel in general. And I really appreciate it. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.